Welcome to NTD China News. I'm Karen Chang. Making headlines this Wednesday, May 1st. Taiwan's Chunghwa Telecom urged to renew contract with NTD's sister station. And China's first ever mental health law comes into effect, but will it really stop the abuse of the psychiatric system? Lawmakers in Taiwan and the US are again looking to the Taiwanese government to uphold the freedom of speech. And it's all got to do with whether a government-controlled telecom company will renew its contract with NTD's sister station in Taiwan.
Taiwanese legislators are throwing their weight behind NTD's sister station in the Asia Pacific. NTD AP broadcasts to the region through a satellite owned by Taiwanese Chunghwa Telecom. The contract is up for renewal, but so far Chunghwa has been avoiding discussions with NTD AP. Some fear it's a repeat of what happened 2 years ago when the current contract was renewed. Chunghwa had initially refused, citing technical difficulties. But many suspect it was because of pressure from mainland China. Taiwan's government has a majority stake in Chunghwa and has been seeking closer ties with the mainland. NTD is banned in China and frequently reports about topics that would be censored in China.
We don't want the same thing to happen again, where we feel some kind of forces are at play. Did Chunghwa Telecom give in to something? I think this will hurt their reputation and also damage Taiwan's freedom of speech.
In a statement on May 1st, NTD AP's CEO, Ian Chang, says that the station approached Chunghwa Telecom in March and again in April to negotiate the contract renewal. The telecom company did not respond to either request. On Tuesday, Lin Taifeng, the president of Chunghwa Telecom's International Business Group, declined to comment about the contract when approached by a reporter from NTD AP.
Don't create these difficulties for NTD AP. I think that Taiwan's government should pay attention to this. Even US lawmakers will look down on Taiwan's freedom and democracy because of how Chunghwa Telecom is handling this.
U.S. Congressmember Dana Rohrabacher has been a supporter of NTD. In 2011, he telephoned Taiwanese President Ma Ying-jeou to urge his government to allow the satellite contract renewal. During a meeting last week of the U.S. House of Representatives Subcommittee on Asia and the Pacific, Rohrabacher again urged Taiwan to make sure NTD AP gets the contract renewal if the island wants to be recognized as a democratic and free country.
China has been labeled a country of particular concern for its lack of religious freedom. That is, according to a report by the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Ruled by the Communist Party, China has been given this title every year since the report started 13 years ago.
The Chinese regime continues to severely violate the freedom of thought, conscience, and belief. That was the assessment in the 2013 report by the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, released on April 30th. For the 13th year in a row, China has been named as a country of particular concern, and the conditions for religions in China have, quote, deteriorated significantly. The report identifies 4 groups of people who are suppressed by the Chinese regime: Tibetan Buddhists, underground Protestants and Catholics, Muslims, and Falun Gong practitioners. Speaking over Skype, Christian rights activist Bob Fu says that the persecution of Christians and Catholics who refuse to worship in state-sanctioned churches has not diminished over the past year.
As to the situation in the underground Catholic Church, and is also being targeted by the Chinese government, especially to those bishops and clergymen and also members of those so-called non-patriotic churches, which means they're faithful to the Bible and accept the leadership of the Pope.
The U.S. report highlights the persecution of the Falun Gong spiritual practice as, quote, some of the most intense and violent. Many practitioners are imprisoned, tortured, and killed in forced labor camps. But the situation, at least among Chinese citizens, may be changing.
More and more people learn about the facts and truths of the persecution and what Falun Gong is all about. And so in China, we have seen a lot of citizens making public appeals for Falun Gong practitioners.
The report documents more than 106 Tibetans who have taken their lives since 2011 to protest the Chinese regime's policies towards Tibet. 52 of the victims were Buddhist monks and nuns, calling for the return of the Dalai Lama, the 11th Panchen Lama, and freedom of religious expression for Tibetans.
China needs to realize that Buddhism is central to Tibetan culture, and any attempts to repress it are going to fail and are simply going to generate more protest and more resistance.
The U.S. report calls for international pressure at all levels of government and a commitment to put religious freedom as a pillar of the U.S.-China relationship. Laurie Garrett, NTD News.
After more than 25 years of debate, China today implemented its first ever mental health law. The communist regime has been accused of abusing the psychiatric system to silence dissidents. Will this new set of regulations be enough to address those concerns? Let's take a look.
China's first ever mental health law came into effect on May 1st. Now, mentally ill patients need to give consent before they're institutionalized. The law was designed to better protect the rights of patients, but analysts say loopholes exist within the new law and that abuses of the mental health system will still happen.
For a long time, authorities have labeled certain individuals as mental patients, even when they're not. These cases, like petitioners or those who have dissenting opinions, are sent to mental institutions by authorities.
The new law was designed to stop these types of wrongful admittance. But while patients now need to agree before getting treatment, there is an exception. Namely, those with severe mental illness or have the potential to harm themselves or others can be forced into institutions by the police.
The management of this is still in the hands of the Public Security Bureau, not the Health Ministry, so this is a big concern for me.
While the law says that these forcibly admitted patients need to be diagnosed at the hospital, some still have reservations.
Right now, under China's political system, authorities have the biggest say in how things are done. So this means that doctors may not be free to make the correct diagnosis.
In 2002, U.S.-based Human Rights Watch published an extensive report about China's government-led psychiatric abuse of dissidents and practitioners of the persecuted Falun Gong spiritual practice. Last August, advocacy group Chinese Human Rights Defenders reported that this politically motivated abuse continues and that hundreds of thousands of people are detained in psychiatric hospitals each year against their will.
And coming up after the break, a top global health expert weighs in on China's deadly bird flu. Hong Kong residents voice anger with a massive Labor Day protest. And looking for China's identity through art in the modern world. NTD speaks with the director of this new film. And welcome back. The number of reported H7N9 cases in China continue to rise, and with it, public scrutiny over whether these cases are the only ones out there. NTD's Laurie Garrett spoke with public health specialist Laurie Garrett. Here's what she says on China's number problem.
The H7N9 bird flu virus discovered in China has put World Health authorities on alert. It's been described as one of the most lethal strains of flu virus by the World Health Organization. But one public health specialist says there's too little information to make this claim yet.
Until we know what the denominator is, how many people get low-level infection without any serious outcome, well, then we have two gigantic black boxes that make it impossible to predict where this is going.
According to Chinese state-run media, 24 people have died from the H7N9 virus out of 126 cases as of April 30th. But experts have raised the possibility that the real number could be much higher. Laurie Garrett says there are several reasons for this. One is that potential patients may not go to the hospital because they can't afford the treatment.
The Chinese government tried to calm people down and said the central government will cover 75% of your health costs. Well, 25% of being in an intensive care unit for 3 weeks is a lot of money.
Others fear the threat of being quarantined, like what happened during the 2003 SARS epidemic.
And they remember that if they admit they have symptoms or somebody catches their symptoms, they're going to disappear for 2 or 3 weeks. How does their family know where they are? How do they make a living? Who's paying the rent if they're not working?
Garrett adds that local officials have also been hesitant to report cases because it could lead to panic. Some of the cases reported so far were only made public because of social media like Weibo.
There's certainly been a lot of controversy about the case reports. And I don't think there's any doubt that certain case reports came out because they went to Weibo first. And it created a kind of pressure. So whatever province you're talking about, the local health authorities, usually within 24 hours after a buzz on Weibo came forward and said, oh, you're right, we have this case, these 3 cases, or what have you.
China's health authorities first reported the H7N9 flu virus on March 31st, with 3 cases in Shanghai. That's around 3 weeks after the first fatal case from the virus. NTD News, New York.
It's Labor Day in many parts of the world today, and in Hong Kong, thousands of protesters took to the streets showing solidarity for a group of port workers who have been on strike for more than a month.
What was a protest of a few hundred dock workers exploded into a protest of thousands. On May 1st, Hong Kong's Labor Day, protest organizers say 5,000 people turned up to support the dock workers' demands for higher wages and better working conditions. The workers say they haven't had a pay rise in a decade, despite working for the world's 3rd largest container port owned by the richest man in Asia, Li Ka-shing.
So it's really very shameful that Hong Kong being the richest, one of the richest cities in the world, and Li Ka-shing being the 8th richest person in the world, under his regime, there are such shameful working condition of 24 hours work, no lunch break, no toilet break, and very low working, low wages, and so I think people in a way, even in Hong Kong, without the strike, they don't even realize that there's such horrible working condition.
Crowds lined the street, shouting slogans and wearing red banners. There were also cardboard cutouts of Li and Hong Kong's unpopular chief executive Liao Chunying standing beside a prop of a worker being squashed by a machine.
Today we want to express how the bosses are like two-faced men. To the public they appear as humans, but in front of our worker friends they are something completely different, like a joker, a demon or a wolf. They drink our blood and exploit our wages. Workdays become longer, but our wages never keep up to speed with inflation. So today we wear these costumes to mock Hong Kong employers.
Today also coincides with the implementation of a recently approved minimum wage hike. Wages will go up $2 Hong Kong dollars, or 26 cents US.
What is China's identity in a culturally Western 21st century? That is the question that Finnish filmmaker Mika Mattila tries to answer in his documentary Chimeras. The documentary looks at China's identity through the modern art world, following the lives of 2 artists who are set apart by a turbulent generation.
Chimeras is a newly released film by first-time Finnish director Mika Mattila. It explores the identity of China in the 21st century through the lens of the art world. Mattila follows 2 artists in their struggle to find an identity in modern China, a China that saw the destruction of traditional culture and its replacement with materialism and Western influences.
Not just Ai Weiwei, but there is another kind of exploration of identity going on in Chinese art scene. And more generally in whole China, I think it's the same question. What is modern? Is it copying Western or is it finding something new?
The film follows renowned modern artist Wang Guangyi and novice photographer Liu Gang. Mattila uses the 2 characters to show the changes that have happened in Chinese society over the last several decades.
Last 100 years of Chinese history is just so turbulent. The society has been changing so quickly. The last 30 years, of the 30 years of Liu Gang's life, it's been constantly changing, and especially Wang's generation. The society during the Cultural Revolution or before Cultural Revolution and the society today, they have almost nothing to do with each other.
Mattila says he is interested in the interplay between China's ancient traditions and its adoption of modern Western culture. He asks the question, can they fit together in a harmonious way?
And if you scratch a little bit, there is a kind of ancient Confucian thinking that's much more powerful in China rather than communism.
Matila says he chose the name chimeras because it encapsulates the contradictions, differences, and unattainability of modern art in China today. NTD News, Toronto, Canada.
And that's all for this broadcast of NTD China News. For more of our China content, visit our website at ntd.tv or subscribe to our YouTube channel, NTD on China. Coming up next is a segment of the 9 commentaries on the Communist Party. Stay tuned.